Here's today's Behind the Shirt. It's the shirt I received when I worked the medical standby for Van Halen's 2 concerts in 1993. This shirt recalls my encounter with one of the greatest guitarists in history. In 1993, the mighty Van Halen was on tour across North America. At this time, the band consisted of Eddie and Alex, Michael Anthony and Sammy Hagar. They were promoting their live recording called Right Here, Right Now. The opening act for the tour was the Vince Neil Band. Vince had left Motley Crue and teamed up with guitarist Steve Stevens. I was working as a paramedic at that time, and one of our contracted venues was the Pine Knob Music Theater in Michigan, outside of Detroit. Even though there was a medical room in the pavilion of the theater, there was always 2 paramedics with full equipment stationed backstage. The medical room was manned by an intern from St. Joe's Hospital. It was basically a room with about 6 cots. Usually the people who drank too much ended up here. Us medics responded into the crowd or backstage. And just to be clear, the bands don't stop playing when someone goes down. I distinctly remember intubating a person in cardiac arrest while Metallica played at full volume while we were ringed by rowdy, intoxicated fans. Pine Knob holds about 15,000 people. Here's the bonus. We would be right there for the sound checks. As a fan, I loved that part. Steve Stevens walked around the seated area to check what the fans would hear. I had been to a few Van Halen shows in '79 and '80, but this was my first with Sammy Hagar. David Lee Roth had left after the 1984 album, and the brothers had tried to replace him with a short list of singers at the time before stumbling onto Sammy. First choice was Patti Smythe from Scandal. She said no. Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates said no. Sebastian Bach and Steve Perry didn't work out either. Sass Jordan was inquired about by Ed. Mitch Malloy actually made it to the 5150 studio and completed a demo, but was turned down. At first, the chemistry between Sam and Ed was great, until it wasn't. To this day, I feel so fortunate to have witnessed a Van Halen soundcheck. Watching Ed grab his striped drill to play the opening of Poundcake was awesome. Being part of public safety at any large crowd event can be unpredictable. I learned that the artists really do appreciate the public safety at their events. Van Halen was no exception. Those 2 nights at Pine Knob were a fleeting moment in the history of one of the greatest rock bands in history. And that's the story behind the shirt. There are tour shirts sold at the merch tables, there are the infamous parking lot shirts, and then there are crew or staff shirts created for individual events. Being a paramedic in Detroit, the home of rock and roll, allowed me to get a behind-the-scenes view of many bands. Subscribe for more classic rock facts and full-length videos.